Heading overseas now, the United Nations has imposed its harshest sanctions in 20 years on North Korea. They're in response to Pyongyang's latest nuclear test and a satellite launch last month that many claimed was a ballistic missile test in disguise. The sanction measures were drafted by the US, but only made possible with the support of China, as Anne Barker reports.
They're the toughest sanctions yet against North Korea, and diplomats at the UN are hoping they'll have a real impact where previous sanctions have failed. North Korea didn't even speak at the UN before the Security Council vote, but importantly, the resolution had China's vote and took 7 weeks of negotiations between the US and Beijing. The US Deputy Secretary of State is Anthony Blinken.
And it sends a very strong message. And not just a message, through the actions that it would require.
The toughest measures will force North Korea's trade partners to inspect every shipment into and out of the country, where before inspections were based only on suspicion a shipment contained a banned item. North Korean companies and individuals have been added to a blacklist, and all countries will be banned from selling Pyongyang weapons and aviation fuel, the kind used to power its missiles. The US ambassador to the UN, Samantha Power, says the sanctions are hugely significant.
As the resolution that we have adopted today underscores, virtually all of the DPRK's resources are channeled into its reckless and relentless pursuit of weapons of mass destruction. The North Korean government would rather grow its nuclear weapons program than grow its own children.
But as tough as the new measures are, North Korea has flouted sanctions before and will likely do so again. And some of the measures aren't foolproof. The UN resolution bans the export of coal, iron and iron ore, only where it's used to fund North Korea's nuclear or ballistic missile programs, a measure some say would be hard to enforce. And Sung-Yoon Lee, a professor of Korean studies at Tufts University in the US, says the sanctions' success will depend on the will of the international community.
I feel UN Security Council resolutions against North Korea in the past have been somewhat like personal New Year's resolutions. The will is strong at first, but invariably the will dissipates, non-compliance sets in, and the problem grows.
Most crucial is China, which, although it supported the sanctions, remains North Korea's ally and has more to lose if the sanctions are enforced. Sung-Yoon Lee says while there are signs Chinese banks have ceased cash transfers with North Korean banks, the government in Beijing may not be so strong.
We know China has had a different agenda. China enjoys just fine its tremendous political and economic influence over both North Korea and South Korea. And that means China is most unlikely to really push North Korea to the brink.
China, for its part, says the sanctions are just a starting point towards a political settlement of nuclear issues on the Korean peninsula. Its representative to the UN is Liu Jiyi. The sanction is not the final purpose of the resolution. The resolution adopted today should serve as a new starting point and a stepping stone in the political solution for the issue. Professor Yoon Lee says he expects Pyongyang will respond to the sanctions with another form of provocation, maybe a weapons test, another ballistic missile launch, or even a controlled limited attack on South Korea. Most likely, he says, it'll link its actions to the latest sanctions and justify them in the name of self-defence.
Anne Barker reports.